Good evening. How are you? I'm doing a sit and talk because today, I had things to do for my clients. Secondly, it rained, and it was kind of a warm rain, but I couldn't go out in it. And finally, we had a meeting of our uh, conservation soil and water district today, and I'll get to that in a minute because we talk a little bit at it about the loss of funds from the Department of Agriculture to farms. But let's start with education. There's a bumper strip I saw in the last couple of days which said, if you think education is expensive, try ignorance. And I used to say, and I ran against Congressman Wolf years ago, and I, during my speeches, would say that education doesn't cost, it pays. And he said, I don't understand that. And maybe he didn't, which is the thickness of the Republican Party to be so self centered that they can't see the obvious thing. The multiples of investing in human capital has dividends to the individual, to the family, to the community, perhaps to the nation and to the world, depending on what it leads you to do. It could be in the arts, it could be a lawyer like myself, it could be an engineer, it could be a psychologist who has a problem and solves that problem and then can help others solve theirs. It could be politics and government. We need all these people. This thing doesn't run automatically. And if you want any proof of it, look at the days since we swore in the big oath in the West Wing. So now, the Department of Education, which they're trying to zero out, which will not be so easy. It's had a history of 46 years as the Department of Education. And I think that this is not a part of their campaign, which is anti-intellectual, but I think it's anti-intelligent for the reasons I've just said. But what they've already done is they've tinkered with what they can do, and they're going to limit certain funding. They're going to make it light. In other words, like things that might be within their discretion, they're going to do to compromise the mission that is the Department of Education. So there won't be oversight. There won't be civil rights enforcement. There won't be the billions lost to impoverished and disabled students. And here's the thing that matters to states and to individuals across our nation, and it is the student loan program. Where is that? Gone. And why do they do it? And we can't say this enough, but I suppose you've heard me say it, so you know it. If you take the money, not just from the Department of Education, all these different agencies, and they end up with X billion dollars, Y, Z, and therefore they reduce the spending to a certain amount. They take that dollar figure, they go over here and they say, now we can spend it by reducing taxes. When you reduce income, they consider that a cost. So what you have is you have a system in which every one of these cuts that does not care for the function of the agency and of the people that they're causing, if you will, economic violence, is going to the rich, to the wealthy, to Mr. Musk. And so we have to keep that in mind, that that's what they're doing. So are we going to be able to save the Department of Education? Well, here's the rub for the Republicans. These funds go to every district in the United States, Republican or Democrat, to people, all for education. And I don't think it's changed yet among the parents and the people who say that if their child has the aptitude and the interest that might do well in a college like that, we do what we can to get them into it. My dad repeatedly said when I was young that he hoped that each generation would do better. And he once wrote me a note that I didn't have much to give you, I gave you a name, so you take care of it. And I do think that when my parents made a difference with the little money they had, is they put things in front of me. And I wasn't conscious of it at the time. I think they did this. They saw I was interested in a microscope. They got me an inexpensive microscope. They saw that I could deal with certain digital recordings and so forth. And in those days it was tape. And so they found things without very much money themselves that allowed me to be dragged into education and curiosity and doing things and learning. That happens to everybody in an education. I'm sorry, the building's making noise. It's late at night. When I say the building, I'm talking about my home. So I think there's a good chance that it won't go anywhere in Congress. So the department, because the Congress has to approve the elimination and changes to cabinet offices. So there's that. Now, let's look at an abuse of the function of the Cabinet Office. We have the Attorney General who's charged 3 in domestic terrorism. What are we talking about? Tesla cars. Because they're being blown up, they're being spray painted, there are people messing with the buildings and so forth. Do I sanction it? No. I consider it acts of civil disobedience. That our system is not responding to individuals. Our law is insufficient. Our Constitution is disregarded. What is the regular order of our legislative branch and of our executive branch and of our judicial branch are all in a state of flux, and we're working within that. And as you've heard me talk about Sir Thomas More, and as we break down our system of law and order and our concepts of what's acceptable, and we feel that the system no longer can serve us in a dispute of any sort, and when you're committing economic violence on people, taking their jobs away, taking their benefits away, making them rush to get whatever medical appointment they can before the time passes, these kinds of things, very destructive. And you know, these people, these politicians all claim to be for the family, and here they are destroying families so they can have money to give it to the wealthy. What kind of addiction is that? I mean, we talk about drug addictions, but this money thing, multi-billion, what can the wealthiest man on earth, Musk, do with that money? What could he possibly do? You know, do primaries for people? I mean, this is an unsettled individual that doesn't understand that because there isn't a place to have a remedy for what's going wrong, that people improvise. And in this case, they blow up his cars. And so why would you blow up his cars? He says, why do they blow up my cars? Because you took a chainsaw. You didn't just get these people to lose their jobs. You took a chainsaw as if you're cutting through their world, their life, their family, their provision for their family, the psychology of what responsibility people in a family have to make it work in their home, in their community, in their nation, and maybe even the world. So we have the impression of a man who is cruel. He's not just, quote, doing a job. He's not trying to figure out a way for transition from the job they have to something else. They don't have an HR department helping someone. They just abandon them. They close them out the door and they're done. Now, the system for the law is what's right isn't working for the individual. So people will find another way. And that is modern civil disobedience, and there'll be more of that. Now, as the Trump, Musk, Bannon do worse, as the remedies fail, we can expect more disobedience. Now, you know, they talk about those who blew up these cars or whatever. Picking that jury, I don't care where it is, assuming that this continuous struggle goes on for 30, 60, 90 days, which is an intolerable notion or prediction to people who are already in the shit, as they might say, in a war situation. And this is a kind of domestic war. People are fighting for their survival, for their lifestyle, for their children, for their futures. And these guys are trashing and burning it. So as that gets worse, the remedy gets tougher for individuals. And so if any people are sitting on a jury, they're smart enough to say, oh yeah, I can be fair about this, and then vote for acquittal, because they think that's just. As the community sees there's not going to be a reckoning for Musk and these guys, and you saw what happened with Trump. The guy gets convicted, nothing happens. You know, that's not a system that warranties trust among the people. In fact, it's the opposite. Now, what we do have going for us is, and I'll get to the courts in a moment, we have a very unusual rallying of the troops, and it's spreading the word, and the people who are attending are not crazy, except they are excited and happy because they have hope, because an 83-year-old man, Sanders, and a 35-year-old AOC are telling them the truth and telling them we're fighting for you and telling them they're with us and we're going to stop this and turn this around. That's a big difference, because the legislature has been nowhere in this fight. And Chuck Schumer was a horrible disappointment. And I assume that has to do with Wall Street. But this is a make it or break it fight we're in, and you can't be doing politics as usual. You cannot be defining what you say today based on your strategy for re-election a year from now. You can't be doing that. You have to be alert to the moment. You have to practice non-attachment from what you formally believe, because what's happening here is not what we usually have. Now, what you say, well, how can you change the thinking of the maggots that follow Trump? And the answer is, they're feeling the pain too. I have had people who are Republicans who voted for Trump saying this wasn't supposed to happen. So I don't say this to them, but what are they thinking? They were happy that others would suffer, but they weren't going to suffer. They're not going to answer 5 questions. They're not going to lose their medical insurance. They're not going to lose their jobs. They're not going to receive less money. They think, and then they do. And they need it, and they know that, and they understand that, and they were promised that, hey, your food's going to cost less. Things are going to work out. That, just bear with us. And if you believe that, there's a bridge in Brooklyn you can get for $25. Not so, obviously. Now, we also have the courts, and they're under attack. They're under attack by Trump and his people because they are our path, as is always intended, to enforce the law as individuals against the government that are defying and breaking the law. And so we have stoppages as a result of these lawsuits by ACLU and other Google groups, and I don't mean that offensively, that's just a shorthand for referring to groups that do the right thing by the people for the issues that they care about. So if you're a retired employee, there's a group. If you're concerned about the environment, there's a group. And each of these is fighting. And we have 20 plus states, attorney generals who are prepared to bring lawsuits. And there are going to be additional lawsuits brought. I talked to some people on the Hill a couple of days ago, and they're going to be briefs filed in connection and in support with some of the actions in court. And I think they're up to 100 now. So there are 100 cases in court. We see the better people in the legislature are going out and they're stumping for it. I myself am going to be a panelist at a meeting. I have no idea who's going to be there, how successful it will be or not. But on March 28th, I'm going to this kind of a town meeting. I think it's going to be of the ilk of what we see some of these Democrats doing, meaning what are our solutions? What can we do? What are the facts? And that's what people need. We do that somewhat here. When we participate one with the other, we're talking about what's going on, what can be done, how we can help each other. And so that takes care of this vacuum that the government would prefer to have, and the chaos the government would prefer to have, because they're trying to destroy our way of life. What we presume are the basic minimums of our security in a country that promised that you would be equal before the law, and that you would have a right to vote for what you believed was necessary for your government to operate right. So, among the judges, we have Judge Boasberg saying the government has to answer about those migrant flights, and what he said he's gotten so far has been woefully insufficient. And so now he's giving them until Tuesday, and he wants them to answer the question, did Trump's order fail to stop those planes that already left with deportees, and wasn't that a violation of the court's order? Now, they'll drag their feet and jump up and down, and they're hoping for a Hail Mary pass, but I don't see it. And when they attacked Judge Boasberg, as we talked yesterday or the day before, no less than the Chief Justice Roberts said, cut that out. That's not the way it works. The way it works is there's a final order. If you disagree with it, you appeal it, and you get one or you don't get one. It's upheld or it's not upheld. That's our system. That's the system we need to get back. And I don't know how strong Roberts will be with the individual issues as they arise and come up to his court and have to be dealt with. But I think Alito, in a way, is a wall of radical approaches to these issues. And as a result of that, I think it'd be harder for more serious justices, even those we disagree with, like Barrett and Roberts usually. I think it'll be harder for Barrett and Roberts to side with them because they're concerned about the court as an institution. And I bet they're sensitive to the fact that when Trump gave that State of the Union message, he says, "Oh, and thanks again," like it was a done deal. Well, I think it was a done deal, but I don't think Roberts is prepared to make a Faustian bargain with this son of a bitch for all time. And the pushback on Trump attacking the judge was a good example of the hope I have that even the Supreme Court is going to be looking at 5-4 decisions or not even taking on cases because the lower court satisfied all the need to review the matter. That's one thing. Now, I'm talking to you after midnight because that's when I got the chance to do this. And 1 minute before midnight, a judge told Doggy, to leave off the Social Security data. Don't touch that stuff. Stay away from it. And it was a 137-page ruling. And I haven't read it because I only read the summary of what the case is about. But what this means is the court is very strong and it's moving forward and they know what risk they're at. And when an individual makes a decision, and I forgive me for repeating it, but it appears it's going to be a talking point forever among these people, a single judge in a single district in America might have a case that he could make a ruling that would apply broader than the district in which the judge is sitting where this is being considered. And they say, how can one judge make this decision? Well, how could Alito make his decision? He's only one of 9 people for the entire United States, and he wasn't elected to anything either. So to pretend that these individual judges are different than they are. So how do we gather the support more generally of the people? Well, it starts with an individual judge. Might go to a 3-judge panel. There are special 3-judge panels to expedite, or a 3-judge panel on appeal on a civil or criminal case. And then when they make a decision, then you can appeal it to that entire court in that circuit, say the D.C. Circuit. And then if you have an issue, and there are certain rules about it, you can apply to the Supreme Court. I'm a member of the Supreme Court. I've never had a chance to argue before the Supreme Court, but I have submitted papers to the court. And as a result of the papers I submitted, the case didn't go forward. I'm not saying anything special to me. That's just the way it works. And then if it's an emergency matter, the judge responsible for that jurisdiction may look at it and do something with it. Otherwise, the full court might have a decision. They may play with the time as they did with the immunity decision that favored Trump. An example that there are more hacks on the bench than we should have in a court of law, which is the court of last resort in America. So that's kind of what I see. So this judge, in a minute before midnight, released a 137-page ruling, said, no, you're not going to go rummage around Social Security information looking for targets for declaiming or elements of Social Security. That's not going to happen. And it bears repeat, forgive me again, it bears repeat that the objection by Trump is, there are people 200 years old. No, there are records of people 200 years old, perhaps, that haven't been scrubbed out of the system. But no one 200 years old is receiving a dime anywhere. And the number of those who receive Social Security corresponds to those who are current. And so you may say, oh, the records say this, but they're being dishonest, big surprise, when they say, oh, we're paying people, and if we just eliminate what we're paying these people who are dead, that'll make a difference. Well, the money's not going to anyone. It's a zero saving. And if you'll lie about that, you'll lie about anything. And this is no surprise because Trump is a walking lying machine. And in the early days when I was doing these back in 2015 and 2016 when Trump came on the scene, knowing of him because I was from New York, and I got to see him in his younger years and his older years, and he was always this tramp. He was always running the grift. He was always, a day late and more than $1 short. So, because his mystery was all with debt. So we have this system, and we see it, and so we have to react to it. Now, it's everywhere. And so I mentioned at the outset that at the Soil and Water Conservation District, we had a meeting today. And during the meeting, we had a representative, as we often do, from the USDA and Department of Agriculture. And that's important for our function about soil and water, but other things as well. And obviously, we end up doing a variety of things. And what we were informed is because of an inflation ruling nationwide, there was going to be $7 billion going to USDA for various projects. And then they got word, you're actually instead only going to get $2 billion, a drop of $5 billion. That has enormous adverse impact on the farms and the various programs we have. And these stories just go on and on. There are lots of them. And, when you drill down to it, there was something like 60 different projects locally in our area, which is Northern Virginia and Loudoun County. And when some of those would be screened, not complying or not ready or whatever, there'd be 47. And so now we're down to 10. So we went from 67 to 40 something to 10 on those projects. The nation went from $7 billion down to 2, losing $5 billion in expenditures for these programs. This is real. And on the other side of these things are functions of a farm, farmers, families, all manner of thing that you can imagine in a vibrant economy. And frankly, Trump and his cohorts are out to destroy America. There's no other way to look at it. I mean, you have to be so totally dumb that I don't believe is the case. Venal, I believe, that helps. Craven, I believe. Self-aggrandizing, I believe. If he's getting money for his friends, he's getting it for himself too. And he has Elon Musk. He holds him tight because this is a man who has the funds that can help him make anything happen. And the day he doesn't need him, he'll be gone. So, what are we looking for? Keep talking. If there are town meetings in your area that seem to be productive, rather than some Republican saying some stupid ass thing that has no help for you, and he's unreconstructed, then go to one in a neighboring county or something. And I don't mean to treat them like you're going in for a seance or something. Go to them to get the tools for yourself to take care of yourself. Call your congressman. Call your senator. Spend $5, $10, join ACLU, because they're doing active stuff. But they're not the only one, and I don't mean to limit it by always saying them, but I go back to my law school days thinking of the ACLU and looking across my lifetime. They're among the groups that have done more for good, for individual rights and liberties, than many other organizations. And so they've carried this through. And they have a top flight team, and you can see from their local newspapers that they're getting results. So, sorry to come to you so late, and you can listen to this with your breakfast. I don't know. Anyhow, it takes a few minutes to upload, and we have a bandwidth that's like this instead of yours, perhaps. And so it may take a little bit to upload. So all the best. Thanks for joining me. I hope you found this helpful, and I look forward to talking to you tomorrow. Bye-bye.